something or other that was working on Appleton Farms and wrote up an assessment of the feeling of being on the farm. And I put it over there so you can read it yourself, because I will burst into tears if I read it to you. It's so beautifully written, and it's about the spirit and the feeling of the farm in many ways. So I thought I'd start out with, I don't know, I hope I'm not repeating things that I've already said to others, having said a little bit at the AFT thing about our early years of growing up around here. And I was born 1940, so we spent the war years living in the Cutler house, I think I've got that right, Coolidge, over on what became the McCain property. And the house had no real heating in it. It was my brother Jack, who was a couple of years younger than me, shoveling coal into it. Yeah, and it was very cold, wasn't insulated. So we thought it was just fine, that's where we lived, and everything was kind of amusing, I guess. And then my father came home from the war about 4 years later or something like that, and he was horrified at the way we were living, which is the way everybody was living everywhere, because they had their fire heat. I don't know about you, Coolidge, but the heat came out of the fireplace. So
we were cold. We burned coal in Hamilton.
You did,
yeah,
but you weren't also sitting in front of the fireplace.
We had a fireplace, and we had that going all the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big walk-in though.
Yeah.
Because that house is not very old. It's only 1920s or 30s.
Yeah. Well, there was some places where we went into later on where the fireplaces were going, and they also had their chickens as well as other animals besides their dogs around the fireplace. It was quite interesting, but cold. So my father called up Mr. Winthrop, and they were great friends, and said, have you got a place where I can move my family? Now, Nat brought this up in his talk about the fact that these people that owned these estates cared so much about what they had probably inherited and lived on, that when a place came up for sale, they bought it and paid the taxes and held on to it until people came back or came home or whatever they were doing, and they were able to buy the properties back from the people that had saved them. And I was telling different land trusts I was talking to about this, and I suddenly realized, oh my God, they called themselves the syndicate, and they were probably our first land trust. And it was Mr. Winthrop, it was all the Appletons, everybody.
Sagamore Hill.
Sagamore Hill, yep. So we've been so lucky to live in a place like this with everything that we have here. And it's really suddenly come to me this year of what these people did and how they saved everything and all the trails for us. So Appleton Farms is very special for me because my mother, her grandfather was part of the Appleton family. And so when we were alone there before my father came back, she wanted to go over and see Aunt Fanny Appleton, who was living in what is now gone. The house, it either burned or got torn down. It's on the driveway that comes in from Waldingfield Road. And Aunt Fanny would be sitting in a dark house in a wing chair in the far corner of the living room space, and she was dressed all in black. And I was a terrified little child, so I didn't behave very well. So my mother would say, if you can behave yourself and be polite to Aunt Fanny, then you can go out and find Cousin Joan somewhere on the farm. So I started hunting around for her, and she would always be sitting in tall grass, surrounded with every kind of animal you could possibly think of, and I have a picture of her here. And then we'd sit there and talk about things that only she could talk about that would interest a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old or whatever I was at that time. So I, very young age, got grounded in whatever was of Appleton Farms for me at whatever age I got to.
That's a great picture.
Do you remember the girl?
And I'll say more about her as we go along. Now, so I looked up some facts about Appleton Farms in the last week. And I don't know how many people have actually been on the farm, spent time on the farm, worked on the farm, found the immigrant rock up in the great pasture. Nobody.
Nobody, that's
Good.
amazing.
Oh, this is
That is
exciting.
amazing.
You all know where it is, don't you?
Yeah, I've been on it, I've read about it.
Okay, so Samuel Appleton was called the immigrant, and he came from Waldingfield in England in 1638. And he's the one that started the farm and joined, they had friends of the Winthrops, that's probably how they ended up back there. It's 1,000 acres. It's the largest grassland area in the region. And it was protected by the oldest land trust in the world in 1638, which was the British. And the British Trust based its beginnings on Appleton Farms, 9 generations of Appletons.
That's amazing.
And I think it was King Charles the First, wasn't it?
You know, the guy that, it's the trail, who is the trail named for?
Oh, all right. I thought the sign
What is
said
that
it was.
lane that comes from the pinnacle right straight to the farm?
From the
Here we
pinnacle,
are.
the monument, you mean, right?
Yes.
I can't remember.
We have a picture of him in a top hat.
Prince of Wales.
Thank you,
Oh, it's the
Prince of Wales.
Yeah,
People chime in like Sam is not shy
Once I
to
heard top hat. I know this.
He was on a black horse, the house was white, it was a beautiful house, it had columns in front of it. And Aunt Fanny came to the front door to greet him. There's just so many stories about this farm, and it, to me, is just a wonderful, wonderful place. And to have it be, it's sort of part of my family is really wonderful. And Joan was the kind of person that when we started the Trail Association, she was so excited about it. She really helped us because she really wanted to know who was riding on her property and all about them. And we had tags that were attached to the bridle or the saddle that said that we were members of the Trail Association. She helped us a lot, and she would ride around, it was quite fierce, on a scooter and ask you for your tag, and you had to have your tag, and then she wouldn't say, get off the property immediately.
She did?
Yes, and she usually rode a mule or a little pony. It was quite funny, and they really helped to start the hunt. I mean, Aunt Getchell told me that there would be no hunting over Appleton Farms. It was all due to the Appleton family. They brought the hunt in on their property. I didn't know that. But, and it was so funny because Frank, he was a stuffy old fart, and he rode in the front, and Joan rode in the back in her green padded winter mucking out jacket with her muck boots on either a small pony or a mule with a lot of hair on them. It's just delightful. So that's sort of the history of how I got started with Appleton Farms, so many, I think I'm either 85 or 86, what am I, Sam?
85.
Thanks. That's a long time. And the trustees of reservations is the oldest land trust in the world. The British Trust was modeled after it. I don't know if I told you the name of these landowners. Oh, it's that son over there.
Good afternoon.
Making sure I'm telling the truth, as usual. Welcome, friends.
It was called one of the founding farms, right? One of
Yes.
the original 5 or 6 founding farms?
Yes, I made her read all day today.
I'm learning.
Yes, it
Well,
is.
it's
We have a little
reputedly
book
the
with that in it.
longest farm still in the ownership of the original family that got the grant from Britain.
Yeah.
And it's still a working farm.
Oh, good for you, Coolidge.
There we go.
Perfect. That's great. Now, did I say that those landowners were called the syndicate? I think I did.
Yes.
Okay.
How
So,
many people, how many
Have you got a
landowners
list of
were
the
this?
members there?
Yeah. Do you know who was in the syndicate?
are you kidding? It's all those old farms. It was, Mr. Winthrop, maybe Mr. Clark.
You always told me Mr. Clark was involved.
Yes.
Maybe Gil Stewart.
Ah, good. Gil Stewart, your
Well, Judge
stepfather.
Bradford made him first.
Oh, yes, of course he would be. Yeah,
Standing backwards, his name was.
yeah, that's,
Standish.
that's right.
He was the judge in Ipswich Court. for many, many years.
And all those properties remained, and that's what was the beginning of our hunt country. So, I want to talk about the hunt just a little bit, and then I'll get off that and get back on the part about what I'd like to see happen over there. But anyway, I started hunting when I was 8. My mother rode in a side saddle. If she was astride, because the side saddle horse was being ridden by my father, who was, he worked for Mr. Winthrop. Daddy was a hunts person, and my father was never very good with dogs, so I never understood how that worked, but anyway, he was a whip. And, he would come knock on my door at 3:30 in the morning or 4, and off we'd go hunting, because we didn't have a van and we didn't have our only groom was a drunk who had a still in the basement of a small house over there. I'm sorry I'm recording all of this.
No.
I'll tell you his name.
It's great.
We want the dirt, we want the tea.
Give the people what they want.
So off we'd go, and the way we would operate would be, we'd get to the hunt beginning, and there'd be an older man, always a man, who gathered the children that were unescorted, which was always me, and many others, thank God. There were all these other families' kids. And they'd give us the rules, they'd tell us where we were going, and they'd tell us how to behave. And they would say, if you do not pay attention to this, you'll be sent home. And I thought, well, that's great, I don't even know where I am, so I hope I better behave. And luckily I had a really nice horse. She's over there, jumping over the coop, the white gray.
Breaking stuff.
Yeah.
Her name is Bellfounder, and I
Go fast
called
and
her
break stuff.
Smokey. And she, Bellfounder, very strange. Belonged to a girl that went away to school, and the parents gave us the horse, and she just did everything. She did everything except line up. In the very rare times I was in a show class, she refused to line up, and she insisted upon standing next to the judge. So we didn't get a ribbon. Practically stepping on his feet. So anyway, that was the beginning of hunting for me, and it was so thrilling and exciting. And you were blooded with the fox that was in
Right in
downtown
Westfield.
Hamilton,
Right there,
right there.
yeah.
Oh, I was blooded over in the middle of Hamilton,
What
like,
is that?
Well, that was the day the dentist,
yes,
we had a
exactly,
meet
the
on
dentist,
Malden Street,
that's right,
right by the railroad,
yep,
in front of the dentist.
yep.
And we were all there and the hounds were tearing apart the box, and one thing I put up the window to see what was going on.
Oh,
He was
my.
very good about it, actually. He said, boy, that's the most fun I've had in quite a few mornings.
Well, fortunately, my fox was not handed out in pieces, that would have finished me off. I
Oh,
think
really?
I would have gone home and never left the house again after that. You're braver than I am, Coolidge.
Well, I had my grandmother's mask too.
Don't tell me, I don't wanna hear about it. Oh, it's an animal. So, and then my mother, rode the horse, this big thoroughbred mare, all through the war, and she knew the countryside down, just like your mom was, they were great friends. And so she could hear when the horn would blow and say that they had a fox or wherever they were. And she always knew where in the countryside, and she'd bushwhack. Oh, I know where they are, we've got to go right away. So now this is what Franz would like to do, I think, a little bit. He's trying to design a trail over there back of the old gravel pit where the people ride along the top of the ridge and on their horses, and then down below the hounds are working, right, in your cleared out field, and you can watch them work because it's very exciting, really, now that you just drag that old bag around. Yeah. So that's the story of how I started to ride. Oh, I'm making progress there.
Doing a great job.
Okay. And I have been kind of involved with the farm over these years, definitely when Joan was there. And what I always wanted to have the farm be was something where people like me who was interested in farmers and farming and the difficulty of the work and all, not only is preserved and used and farmed, but done in such a way that people can learn from it, where they can go and meet with whoever's in charge of the soil, the grazing, the different types of grazing animals in the different groups. And if it's cows, what happens, whether it's dairy or not. And Appleton tried for a while to be a dairy farm and produced its own milk. And so, but, because here I am with my horses, and I'm used to working around horses most of the time, but boy, I sure as hell respect a cow, especially with horns. They can be protecting their calves, they can be being a bully and all sorts of different things. It's not something that you, for me, could have any real connection to it. So I started to get very interested in this regeneration, recycling, farming that you do on what the soil is, first of all. So I joined the Vermont Land Trust, and now I go up there when they have these outings with the soil people that come from the state and talk about the grasses as they put a square with paper rolls or wooden sticks or something, tell you every grass that's growing in there and how to get that particular grass. And then how you work out your herd sizes so that it works with the land and doesn't overgraze the land, which is one of the things that I worry about with Appleton. Several years ago, what happened was that other farms run by the trustees couldn't take care of their herds properly, so they dumped all these different herds at Appleton, which is why you had so many different colored cows for a while. They got up to 119 cows. And really the property in the Great Pasture should only be grazed by about 60 cows. So, I don't like to eat meat, so I don't like to kill cows. So they managed to find 2 farmers that would take about 60 cows. And the White Park herd, for any of you that know anything about heritage breeds, came from Sheldon Pennoyer, if anybody knows who he is. He was in Essex, I think. And he was having to move to New Hampshire, and his son had this lovely little herd, and he couldn't take them with him. So in those days, Freddie Winthrop was running all our different farms. And I said, well, ask Freddie, I think he'll take the herd. So that was the beginning of the White Park herd. And
That's when Freddie was chairman of the trust?
Yes, exactly that. And so I would like to see, they've mixed up the breeding on that small herd now, but I'd like to see some purebred. Sam told me to say this, what I wanted to see happen to the farm. A pure White Park heritage breed on the farm. And perhaps, I don't know about heritage pigs, but boy, I've had pigs and they can be monsters, so I'm not pushing pigs. I helped them rebuild something called the sheep shed, which was for the sheep flock, so that the cows can go in for the winter. That produces the compost for the fields. But in order to get a herd of cows in for the winter, the cows have to trust you. You have to have one cow that leads them in. And when they realize where they're going, they go very fast. So we had this wonderful farmer called Aaron Knight, and he was there for a while. And he made friends with Angie, who was a White Park. And so the last time I saw them come in, which was 2 years ago, he had this huge herd of 119 cows with Angus and belted Galways and all these different cows. And they started out from the great pasture, and I was standing with Aaron's wife and a girl that took care of the smaller animals, and we had snow stakes, and we were to turn them at the corner down to the sheep shed. Oh my God, that was very exciting. So they first on Saturday, the wind was blowing and the cows got spooked, so they stopped coming and ran back to the great pasture.
Oh dear.
So we went back the next day, and it was a nice sunny day, no wind, and so here they came, and you could hear them mooing the whole way down, all through the fields. They got to the railroad bridge, and they saw where they were going, and they started to run. And Aaron was about that tall, and he was hanging on Angie's ear, running over the railroad bridge with all of these cows in like an old-fashioned Western stampede. It was just absolutely amazing. And so they came straight at us, and luckily just before the snow stake when they realized where they were. So I want to see more of this kind of stuff happen, with people being able to learn about things without having to go to Vermont. And they have a guy there called Alejandro, and he is the soil person. And they've got to sort of open up and make things more exciting and interesting so people can really learn about how hard it is to farm. And they've got this wonderful Andrew there who does the CSA. And he came in the very first week that we started with the farm, with our little farm group that knew nothing. And he's still there. And the people that work for him, and he gets a new crowd of young people every year, go out and can start their own CSAs. So if anybody that knows anything about what's happening at Essex Aggie, I thought they'd gotten rid of the agriculture stuff and went totally to the electronic stuff, but apparently they haven't.
No, they have that.
Yeah, so I really want to find out who's doing that, to see if we can bring those two things together. Because we have had in the past, Sam, some success with the girls that come from the equine program.
Yep, I had a couple this year at my barn.
Yeah.
They were great.
Yeah, and try to integrate them into our farm work as well, maybe, would be kind of a fun thing to do, I think. So that's my idea of what I see working with something like Appleton Farms. And then with the hunt, I wanna try to expand that a little bit. We were successful in getting last year into the grass rides
2
2 years
years
ago.
ago.
2 years ago. So the grass rides, we were always riding in there. And I don't think that there are any signs for the pinnacles and the history. Unfortunately, Appleton had a farm manager called James Gardner, and he made off with all the signs, all the historic signs. And then several years later, he turned around and tried to sell them to the Trail Association. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Can you just
Statute of
imagine
limitations expired.
Don Curiali dealing with that maneuver? Holy Jesus. So I'm gonna at least get a sign made for the, whatever it is, the old house or the new house, which they now call the laundry. And it's infuriating. That was the White House with pillars and King Charles or whatever, and the horse in front of it.
That's Wales. That's
Prince of Wales, yes. Anyway, so that's one thing. I've done something with the water, I've drilled a well in a drought, which wasn't the best thing for me to do. So that we have the water now that the climate has changed so much over there.
I still remember the corner where I fell off in a fox hunt,
Oh,
going around the
Coolidge.
grass rides. And my mother, who was just behind me on Oriole, came and she fell off too. Same
Did you
spot.
fall on top of each other?
Yeah,
I
and you
fell.
haven't mentioned the carpet club yet.
Oh, yes.
Oh, well.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I fell on the grass rides too, but I don't know whether I was on the mile or not.
Well, I was about 3/4 of the way around.
Were you?
We were headed towards the monument, but
We hit the
we
roots.
didn't make it.
It was one of your, it was the big chestnut mare, I think.
Well, that was Oriole.
Yeah.
That was, my mother was on.
Oh,
I was on a pony. I was just on
if I'd
Coca-Cola.
known that it had fallen down with your mother, I never would have gotten out in the grass rides.
You should know that her mother and my mother were very close friends.
Yeah, they were, they rode together all the time.
I remember your mother riding that. She'd ride over here.
Yeah,
After she stopped hunting, she kept riding,
Oh, yeah.
oh, yeah.
many years.
Yeah, so, anyway, I'd love to see a ride led on the mile in the grass rides with an explanation. You think that's a good idea, Franz?
You mean a trail ride or?
Yeah, yeah,
You could do that.
a commissioned ride that goes in, we could take the hounds, it could be a hound,
Or you could do it
Ride.
without the hounds. The grass rides, there's a lot of traffic in there.
yeah, but we've shut it before, we shut it
We
for
shut it for the
Patrick,
Patrick ride.
yeah.
Well, then maybe that's the way to do it again on the Patrick ride.
It was too buggy the year we did it for the Patrick ride to stop and like really chat about all the pinnacles
Yeah.
and stuff.
That's
What
very-
time of year was that?
May,
Yeah, that's Black
the
Flag.
mosquitoes and the midgies were
Yeah.
ready to
little
carry you away.
Yeah, there's lots of wet parts in there.
But it's something we can work on.
I think so, because they were so good when we decided that Thanksgiving hunt could go through the Great
Yeah, that was
Pasture,
great.
and that was great.
Yeah.
And we always used to do that. Was that the Great Wall that we jumped over?
No, we did, well, in the old days, yes, but on this ride, because of all the wire and the great pasture, we did a short route
short
through
cut.
the great pasture, jumped out and then went into the great rides. And we were kind of, Philip, was that last year, Philip, or were you leading?
No,
that
that was
one?
me.
Yeah, so you were jogging through there, I think.
Because the hounds were having a lot of trouble with the scent.
Yeah, and there are lots of stray dogs,
Yes.
which is a challenge.
Confuses things.
If we shut it with enough days ahead of time and have,
Well, we maybe do something where you're not laying a sand, we're just jogging through. Yeah, it might be easier.
oh, and then you could stop. Do people going through there know what the pinnacles stand for, what the
I
parents?
think the main pinnacle actually has an inscription on it.
Why don't you tell us what the pinnacles stand for?
Well, they're for members of the family, as I remembered it. And they
No, that's-
were,
No,
There's
they
something
were-
about one of the houses at Harvard,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they were,
Oh, it's
there
from
was
the
a library at
library.
Harvard,
Library of Harvard,
at Gore Hall.
Laura Hall.
Appleton's helped fund it, and they tore that building down when they built Widener Library.
Right.
And the stones, those pinnacles, there were 6 of them or 8 of them or something, came to the farm.
mhm. Yeah. But Rudy, Franz's brother, my son Rudy, used to work at Appleton Farms doing the haying and everything. And he discovered yet another pinnacle I never knew was there, which is right on the driveway that comes in from Wallingfield.
Yeah,
And they arranged those pinnacles so that supposedly from maybe the new house or whatever house, they could see every pinnacle, even the one up on top of the
yeah, I
hill.
think that's right. I think the terrace where we had the landowners picnic this year, which I think
Yes.
is, from that vantage point, I think you could see most of them.
Yeah,
I don't think you could see the one on the grass rides, but there's the one off of Wallingfield where the hounds often go,
yeah,
because there's a trail through there and then out through the wetland.
yeah.
And then there's one where these pigs are being kept.
Oh, in the woods there.
Yeah,
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's, I think, the one I'm talking about.
and then there's another one which is the back of the great pasture on the edge of the woods to the great rides. And then there's the one in the great rides. So I can think of 4 of them, but
Yeah. What about the Kentucky Gate? Is that gonna get repaired?
It's functional.
It is functional now? Oh, good, they fixed it.
What about the carpet club?
Oh, Coolidge, you explained the carpet club.
Yes, we did.
Well, I just explained how my mother and I fell off in the sandbar. If you fell off, it was recorded in the annals somewhere of the hunt. I think this was, who was the master then, way back, I think it was either Mr. Winthrop, I can't remember. George Clement, never mind. I'll give you a list of masters, but, or she probably has it anyway. If you fell off, in about a week or maybe 10 days, you got a postcard in the mail, which was hand drawn on the back. And it was a picture of a barrel with 4 legs on it, a broom as a head of a horse, and a few other things coming around, and the picture of a smaller barrel. I may not be strictly accurate here, but this is what it seems to me today, of a smaller barrel, you know, either falling off or on the ground. And it said, "Welcome to the Carpet Club. We look forward to your sending $25 to the club in your honor." In other words, if you fell off, you had to pay for it.
Uh-oh. I remember that,
Remember that?
yeah.
not a great inducement for novices.
That custom fortunately did not survive.
No.
But I always said, "Mommy, you know, I just hit my head, and now they want me to pay for it?" You know, it was a little customer friendly. And I don't even know who put that in.
No, but I remember hearing about it.
Oh, yeah. You never got a card?
No, I never fell off in a hunt. I
Oh,
was
you
very
didn't?
careful
Okay.
where I fell off.
Actually, all the other times I fell off, I didn't have to do that, so they probably abolished it after World War II or shortly after. I'm sure when fox hunting went out, that's when it went out.
Well, does anybody have any questions? Because,
The notion of fox hunting versus drag hunting, tell us how that evolved.
oh my goodness. Well, I tell you, this was quite something. I think it was under Russell that we couldn't live hunt. I mean, we were running into people's vegetable gardens, swimming pools. We're all over the place and we were not being appreciated.
Well, not only that.
Oh, we're killing other people's dogs too.
Oh,
What?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Now it's
no,
not
that
a
never
good
happened.
reputation.
Yes, we did. We killed a little fuzzy thing on one of the back roads. The hounds now
I
are
still know
so
where,
beautifully
sorry.
behaved and trained, and they were walked with other people's dogs on leashes. They are. I don't know if other people have done this with other packs, Sam, but your pack is beautifully behaved.
It is indeed.
Yeah, it's an example of how things can work out and everybody can share in what they're doing. And I mean, it was terrifying to have those hounds out going through houses.
Yeah, no, you have to be careful.
It was
Because there
always
hasn't
a-
been a live hunt since, I mean, not since the sixties, right?
I was in the Navy when that passed out.
Okay, so in
In the
the,
60s.
yeah, so it's, and then, you know, back
Well,
in
we
the
don't have
day,
the open country either.
there wasn't enough land, but, you know, in the forties then, in the fifties, there were, I think, 2 packs of hounds. There was a
Well,
long pack
briefly.
and a drag pack.
There was a private pack of English foxhounds. Somebody had a Prince family, I think. I can't remember which
Yeah.
family it was. But then you had the regular myopia hounds. I forget what breed that was. It was mixed breed American, most of it. And my stepfather tells a story. I never was there. This was before even my time. Where on Thanksgiving Day, they would have a fox hunt in the morning. Then they'd go back to myopia and have tiffin, plus, a few tiffin
And libations.
libations, whatever. Then they'd go out and have a drag hunt in the afternoon
Yeah, they,
with the big English hounds on the private pack. And my stepfather, who was hunting in those days, said to me, boy, those jumps in the afternoon, they look a lot smaller than they did in the morning. And everybody went roaring because a drag hunt, of course, is double tick the hindmost. There's not too many checks in a drag hunt. And, or you have to plan them ahead of time. And no, there were 2. The problem was foxes, as you know, all had to water, most of the ones we had, would head to water. And someplace else in State Park, I can still tell you where we lost one hound over there that's probably still there. Anyhow, and so we'd always come back. I was just hunting in those days. I had nothing to do with whipping it. And we'd always come back with fewer hounds than we had when we went out. And then, maybe a week later, Chuck Haley, who was the guy who was taking care of the kennels at the time, with a little bit of assistance from others, would get this telephone call. Myopia 4-2, it was in those days, 2 digits. And he'd say, hey, I got this funny looking old dog up here, all right? And it's got a tag on it. It says, call Hamilton, Mass, 4-2. And Chuck said, yeah, that's one of ours. And some of them were in southern New Hampshire.
wow.
They'd taken time to mosey on up there after whoever. And Chuck would have to get in a truck and go up and fetch it. And so everything is so contained that it's difficult to do that really efficiently. I think I wasn't around, I was in the Navy at the time, but I think that's probably why they gave it up.
Yeah, it's not enough land.
But you're right, dogs, even drag hunting, we had, how many of you remember Harold Bywaters?
Oh, yeah.
And he never hunted the hounds that I know of, but he was a professional whipper in. And he had Neil there, had him there for many years. And when I started whipping in, he would bring me along and say, now, see those dogs up there? And I said, yeah, we probably ought to go up and we would be riding up a road and we'd see somebody with a wall or whatever house and some dogs in the yard. And I said, he says, "You better get up there to tell them to, you know, keep the dogs around." So Harold went up and I followed him to listen to how he did this. And he said, "Hello." He says, and Harold was a rather large individual, and there's another story about him, but I won't tell it now. And he says, "Sir, you better put a hand on that cur dog of yours because we're coming by here." Harold was from Maryland or somewhere, a little bit. The fellow looked at me and looked at Harold and shook his head and took his dogs around the back. But what that says to you, you know, hey, you come up and call my lovely pets a cur dog, and I say I have to put a hand on it. What am I supposed to do? Squeeze it? Or whatever. And there was this language that all the professional whippers used to use, you know, came over from Britain. And that didn't go over very well around here. So we cut that out pretty quickly. But anyhow,
One of my favorite stories that you tell, Susanna,
I'm sorry, what?
is about the dairy herd getting led onto the grass for the first
And where?
time in the spring. Can you tell us a story about that?
Here or somewhere else?
At Appleton,
The dairy herd at Appleton?
Yeah.
when they first get led onto the grass in the spring.
Was that the time that I was shoved up in the air by That was my idea. And I was doing something with kids. Oh, God. And I don't know what I thought I was doing, but anyway, I think we were just thinking that walking, I don't think we had any hounds with us. But it was a big herd and they had big horns. Now, the way my grandson, Franz's son, Johann, tells the story is that he remembers being part of the kids. And he said, well, they came charging at us and my grandmother jumped on the back of that cow and grabbed those hounds, and she was wrestling it to the ground. But I flew up in the air and landed way behind everybody. It was not something I was laughing about, I can tell you that. I am terrified of cows. I was before I even started that. And I don't know what, it was a family walk or something of all stupid things.
Yeah, I don't think I was there.
We were walking the hounds. I was afraid that the cows were stomping on, I said, the hell with the kids. I was afraid they were gonna stamp on the hounds. I got in the middle of
So
the
this
whole
was,
thing.
you were watching a hunt come through or something?
No, we were walking hounds and I took the kids out for a little walk with the hounds. And I don't know, it's lucky nobody got killed, including me. And since then, I've tried not to push anything on a mixture of different animals. But the dragging of the scent for us, when we decided that we were gonna do this, was really fun, because Russell said you have to think
Think like a hound. A fox, rather. Yeah.
fox, think of being up on the stone wall, think of running through a swamp, think of running through the woods. And we were in the fields and back of Pingree School that used to be soaking wet with purple loosestrife in them. Well, we had a cousin, very tall girl from Vermont, Marion, our cousin. She wore a long blue jean skirt, Levi's skirt, and we were running in water up to our ass, dragging the line through that field.
Oh,
We almost drowned in that field. But it was really interesting to think of it that way, about how you could,
yeah.
do the different things to try to throw them off.
And to his credit, it's Russell that introduced that, because Chuck
Yes.
Haley, all they do is he get in his headlight, his great big horse there, and throw a rope over his shoulder with a smelly rag on the end of it, and go straight down the open trail.
90 miles an hour, yeah.
That's
But
coyote hunting, not fox hunting.
Yeah, that's right. But that gave you a different feeling for the countryside too.
Probably the biggest reason, logistically, is when you're on a fox hunt, you never know where you can end up.
True.
Okay, and you got to call. And there were no cell phones in those days, and so you had to find a way to telephone or communicate with your van, your horse box, as you say in Britain, and find out where it is. When we went to drag, at least it was planned out. So every check, you knew where you were going to check, and at every end of the end of the hunt was always known to all who were out. And so there wasn't any, particularly in these short days of fall, there wasn't any really problem. If you had your band with you, that you'd be picked up. More often than not, we'd get into a little controversy of maybe a group of hounds bolted, and all of a sudden some of us had to go collect them and bring them back, etc. And I do remember some moonlight nights riding back from someplace like Sagamore, or where they had been gone from Topsfield, where I had to start out. And it was a little bit romantic, but it was a little bit dangerous if you didn't have a horse. Fortunately, most of mine didn't mind the dark, but they can get awful spooky coming, particularly if the moon's out. So it's the logistics which are vastly improved with drag hunting.
So back to Appleton, when you guys were small, do you remember hunting in Appleton?
I do.
Oh, yes, I do.
Was
very
Colonel
much.
Appleton still doing it?
Oh, yes. He was delightful. He'd ride in the front with his stupid top hat on. I don't know how that was supposed to help him. So you always saw him up there. And I was always in the back. And it was a nice mixture of older people and younger people. And the older men, the only woman that was commanding things was Betty Ellis. And you really
She was
didn't-
field master for many years.
yeah, you really didn't want to tangle with her. And if you were going to end up riding in the front, which is where my son Franz was, especially after I gave him my thoroughbred that I couldn't ride half of, and you couldn't stop that goddamn horse. So then he had to get permission to ride up in front the way he did. And it was very funny because the way I discovered that where my horse was a film, and there was they were quite big fields, and way over, I think it was on the McCain property, in those big open fields, here were these two little black ears, doop, catching up with the hounds. And I went, oh God, that's my son, Betty Ellis is gonna get him. But she never stopped you, did she?
No, she was
Was that
very
when
nice
you
to
were a
me.
junior, you were a kid at that time?
Yeah, well, this would have been, the horse was Buddy. It was a 16 two-hand thoroughbred. Beautiful horse. I was in high school when I was riding
Yeah.
that horse.
That's what,
And maybe 6th, 7th, 8th grade I was riding that
Yeah.
horse.
yeah, we had
So that would have been mid-70s.
we had an Irish girl, Vicky, taking care of the children. So I went to Ireland, I was talking to her mother, and I said, what do I do with this horse? I'm riding with these 3 kids behind me, and I can't stop the horse, I can't turn, I can't do anything. Well, she said, dear, you just give him to your son, Franz, and then you stay away. Don't you say anything about what happens.
Good advice.
It's quite funny.
There were also a couple of other women we used to hunt, and we always knew to either stay behind them or don't get too near them. But one was, of course, Anna French, so roadside, and she was a very senior member of the hunt and helped get the whole hunt through World War II, basically. And her Brady Prince was before my time
I
as
know
master
that.
way back, and he cheated because he had a little hunt with a reed in it, and so he really couldn't blow a real blast on the hunt. So they have those today too, I guess, but still. But
I don't think the hounds mind though.
yeah, right. They don't mind a bit.
But I don't remember.
She was one, and you always stayed behind her. But the other one, was, and she always carried a red ribbon on her tail, the tail of her horse. Don't ride behind Mary Curtis. And cousin Mary Curtis, I don't know how she was a cousin. She wasn't a cousin of yours.
No.
So it couldn't have been there.
No.
Someone else was responsible for that one. She lived in the house right beside the Middendorf estate, Deirdre Peary's place.
Yeah.
In that house right on the other side of the cemetery. But she rode a Strode. But she had a seat looser than a bottle of ketchup. And she would always, the last thing you want to do is this is her seat, not the horse. And the last thing you want to do is ride behind someone like that, because if they fell off at a jump, a refusal or something, and you were too close, you couldn't stop. And, stop your horse from jumping on her. So everybody gave her a wide berth. Helen Morse was always very insistent on this. Don't forget Mrs. Curtis. And we said, don't worry. Larry and I were both hunting in those days, and we reminded each other, don't go behind Cousin Mary. Perfectly nice lady and all that, but she was not a very secure rider.
But Appleton was shut to hunting in the late 70s,
Yeah,
or something
long
like that, because I
time.
only remember going there once as
Yeah.
a child.
That's why I wanted to bring it up, because I really think it should really be a blending of the hunt with everything it does on the farm. It would bring things alive, and you've got all these, a lot of these girls are gone now, but you had a lot of young girls that didn't know what God's name was going on the farm. You had nobody to talk to, and you couldn't really fit it all together. And the hunt just sort of brings the old history alive.
Well, they've been very welcoming
Yeah,
recently.
which
Sam's
is
done a
good.
Even
job
when we
with that.
caused that little stampede on joint meet.
Yeah.
So when we had the Thanksgiving meet at the Winthrops all the time,
Yes.
way back in those days,
Yeah.
it was almost, a God-given right that we would then go out of the Winthrops and then come over the drop jump down into the great pasture, and we would go through there. So they were always pretty good about that.
Yeah.
Well, I remember that, but that stopped.
It did stop.
It did stop.
I didn't
Yeah.
get here until '78, and at that point, Appleton was closed for
Yeah.
many years.
Yeah,
Oh, that's when I heard the cattle were there, probably.
Probably.
I don't remember, I don't think I was really hunting then. If you were all
Yeah.
hunting.
I hunted there once with you. We were tearing through the great pasture, and we were coming out over the
Highland
stone wall.
Over that wall on Highland Street and over the wall into the Winthrops?
I think it was a wall into the great pasture, maybe. But I mean, into the grass.
In the
rise.
grass rise. Yeah, that's right.
And I was
that's
on
right.
Little Joe, and he didn't like jumping stone walls. So.
Well, I don't think you could.
Great place for a
Yes.
visit.
Yeah. No, it was.
Well, at least it
the
was
best.
Smitty.
I never hunted. I rode that horse a lot, but I never.
You never hunted?
Yeah, he didn't jump.
That was father's horse.
That was your father's horse. Yeah.
He cleared new trails with that horse.
Yeah.
If the trail wasn't there with the jump he remembered, he got to the jump. Yeah. Well, do you have any questions at all about, I've gotten away from the farm, just because I shouldn't probably say this, but I'm so annoyed that, the people don't know enough to talk to people, to explain things about this regeneration farming stuff, so I'm gonna really put some pressure on to do that. And the one thing I do wanna say is that this wonderful Katie, who now runs the trustees of reservations, is just great. I don't know if you all know her, she's went on one beach ride or two beach
She
rides?
came for a hack with us, and then she also went to the Cranes Estate for one of the sunrise rides.
Yeah, and she is open to anything you wanna talk to her about. She's very receptive, when I first met her, we'd gone through such an experience with, oh my God, completely incompetent people on the farm and everything else. And I asked her, I said, do you believe that the trustees is in fact the oldest land trust in the world that the British trust modeled itself off of? And I'd asked the previous head that, and they couldn't even answer me. They just giggled, like some 6-year-old brat. And she grabbed my hand and said, I'm all about the land. And that's the way she is.
Well, the concept goes back to the Middle Ages, but, depends how you define a land trust.
Yeah.
I've always understood it to be a creation essentially of evolving British law. That so-and-so gets this piece and so gets this piece and so gets that piece.
Oh, you're way ahead of me because I just concentrated
But
on what the land trust
Freddie would, young Freddie would be, our Freddie would be a better source
Yeah,
than I am over there.
yeah. Freddie Winthrop was great in the way he handled the land trust stuff.
Yeah.
And he just followed in the footsteps of his father, really.
Yeah.
So we've been very lucky, I think, to have what we've got here. It's amazing.
That's for sure.
And the more people know about what it takes to work with these landscapes and how important it is to protect them, the better off we're gonna be. That's what I feel. It all is part of the puzzle.
Susanna, what is Katie's vision for Appleton? Like, what does she think the purpose is of Appleton, sort of, going forward in the community, in the larger community?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, great question.
And she's so approachable that I can make a time, anybody can make a time to talk to her.
She also mentioned in her, one of her first interviews that she did for the trustees, that she didn't have any preconceived ideas of what each property should be like because she wanted to get to know each property individually. And she's doing all of Massachusetts, so she's been spending time at each property over the last, I think she's been there almost a year now. And so she's gone to almost every single
But
property.
she's just been the head for a year?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because in
she's
the
been-
Berkshires,
she's
the
been-
trustees has a reputation of being not super interested in really, they're wonderful, but like in terms of how they wanna run stuff, they wanna run it, and they wanna run it the way they wanna run it. So there are some historic properties out there, I just know this because my family's involved in a couple of them, that there might have been some interest in engaging with the trustees, giving the property, do you wanna help out, whatever it might be. And it was sort of gonna be like, well, our way or the highway kind of thing, and in both cases, I think you have two in particular, one of which is Edith Wharton, the Mount. They elected not to do that because even though the trustees is a kind of heavy hitter and could be good, it felt like, what's gonna happen, you're gonna lose enough of an ongoing relationship that people are already invested in to kind of just hand it over, hook, line, and sinker. And maybe that has a good thing, like they run now in Keg the way they run it. I mean, they have a lot of property in the state, but I think feels
They're
to me the way that
largest, yeah.
Berkshire's is run is maybe a little different than here. And even your idea about the signs, I mean, Jen and I are over there all the time on horses. There's a lot of places we're not allowed to go, but it's a little bit mysterious because there are a lot of animals over there. I mean, they had like 30 pigs for a while, big chicken houses on rollers. The cows are getting moved around, and that's us being completely ignorant about what the underlying concept is, but we don't even, we're like, oh, I wonder what they're doing with these, or that's interesting, are these heritage breeds, oh, look how interesting they are, just coming up in conversation, but having no real idea of what anything is. And that's not a fault, it's just a curiosity of if you're gonna be a big demonstration farm, especially with generation farming, which has a lot of interest, I think, among certain people, it seems like such a great opportunity.
That's a great idea.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people over there all the time who just come with their dogs and then leave again, or the kind of conversations we've had over the years, just walking along with the horses, it's a terrific place. There's so many things of curiosity over there, but none of them are really, you'd have to go home and really poke around on the computer to figure out what's going on over there.
Yeah, well, somebody last week or maybe the week before, kept asking me, several people, about trees being cut down. And a lot down, on Wallingfield Street, they were cutting trees down that get these bugs.
Yeah, there's the ash decline and
Yes.
stuff like that. They need
Yeah.
to sometimes cull them out before they make it even worse, even though
Yeah.
it looks like someone's slashing through the forest. It's
Well,
maybe
we've
not.
got ash problems again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
time.
So, and then the tree people have been donating trees going down the walks from like the dog yard. They gave those trees and planted them themselves. But I don't know, I was gonna call somebody about trying to find that out. But I would love to talk to Katie, and anybody that would like to join me would be very welcome, because she seems so open, don't you think, Sam, with the
Absolutely.
riding and everything?
Very open.
They do have, I mean, if you go to the farmyard area, they do have a lot of signs out explaining.
By the barns and stuff.
Exactly, and they do offer programming. You could go on a walk with a guide or something, so it's a big property and they have a lot going on there, but I think they are trying.
They had that cool outdoor theater for a while. Do you remember that a few years ago? It moved, the actual performance moved out in there. That was quite creative.
Yeah, I never went, but yeah.
It's pretty well done.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, you all been very patient, and thanks for all the input. I can use all the input that anybody can give me, so call anytime, or call Franz, he's the master.
Well, Sam, she's the boss.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.